Good evening and welcome to Sunday's Roundup with me, your host, Richard Taylor. And on the panel tonight, my guests are Sophie Corcoran. She is a political correspondent and a commentator. And I did say earlier, I spoke to her, I said she was a socialist commentator. I didn't mean that. I meant a social commentator. That's what I actually meant, right? So, Sophie, just to let you know, I know you're definitely not a socialist, given that you're a big fan of Margaret Thatcher, right? And, of course, we've got the news correspondent, political strategist, my good friend Dewar, joining us tonight as well to discuss the papers. That's right. Every Sunday we do this. And as usual, Bishop, because he is a man of the cloth as well, I've got my communion wine again this Sunday as I did last Sunday.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. I thought you'd say a bit more about that, but never. We'll move on then, shall we? Okay, let's begin with Sophie then. Sophie, look, lots has been going on this week, isn't it? I saw a tweet earlier from, I think it was Politics for All, where they mentioned a private conversation with Priti Patel, where she stated that the Home Office is not fit for purpose, as if we didn't know that, given the seismic numbers of people coming onto the Kent course at the moment, over 28,000, I think it is, ridiculous numbers. Give us what the headline is, which paper you're talking about, and tell us about the Channel Crossings. I think that's what you want to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's multiple different papers that this one is in. It's pretty consistent across all of the national papers about how...
what's the headline? Give us the headline. Which paper's in and what's the headline?
The Sunday Telegraph, and it's how the migrant crossing crisis is going to lose the Tories quite a lot of support, which should be no surprise considering that's one of the major points that every single election since I was born, from what I recall, that has been a major talking point and a major winning point for the Conservatives in their election since I can remember from my very early political days, and that's always what has captured them the most support, but seemingly they've never ever done anything to manage it. And you said earlier about the Home Office and how it's obviously not fit for purpose, but I do think it's the first time that anybody has actually admitted it. So that could be actually quite a step in the right direction for somebody to say that, the Home Office is not fit for purpose. And finally, the Home Secretary has admitted it now. She's obviously in task of trying to sort it out. But I do think that people are starting to get fed up with the Conservatives, winning elections based on immigration. And yet every time we see records of migrant crossings day after day after day after day. And it's quite astonishing how they've managed to lock an entire country down for 2 years, but can seem to get a grip of the channel.
Yeah. It's amazing. And we were told Brexit, all the dividends of Brexit, where we take back control of our borders. If anything, it's gone the other way completely, hasn't it?
I don't think that that's a particular problem with Brexit, though. I don't think that's a Brexit issue. I think that's a government issue, it usually is.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying that, and they say, this is obviously, I know clearly it's nothing to do with Brexit. It's to do with the fact that we've got a weak, spineless government. I mean, they're talking now about the potential of offshoring them to Albania while they process them to see if they've got.
Just send them back to France.
Well, the whole idea of this, Bishop, you know what I'm saying? Look, it's like this, isn't it? I mean, they're supposed to be fleeing war-torn countries or fleeing persecution or suffering, right? I get that. There are genuine asylum seekers. I get that. Of course, and we should look after them.
Always fighting age men.
But yeah, I mean, I look at the boats coming in. I look at the people that are on there.
The women?
They're all young guys with mobile phones, filming themselves and sticking fingers up. I'm like, what's that about, Bish?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems that we have to admit is the fact that, like Sophie said, the government has failed monumentally. This was one of, if not the biggest promise made in the post-Brexit referendum era, and certainly in the Brexit referendum campaigns for us to take back our borders. I notice a lot of commentators, and particularly certain unnamed sources that I've got up in Westminster, arguing the fact that, well, we don't have sufficient laws to deal with this. This is why we have a somewhat soft approach to it. We have had quite enough time since the withdrawal agreement was enacted, since we went through that whole period where the transition period, we are now in control of our own laws. There is absolutely no excuse why we've not been able to put these through Parliament.
Sorry to interrupt you, but on that, we do have laws, don't we? Because you can't come here unless you follow the right procedures and process. So we do have laws. Sophie, what do you think? We do have laws. They're just not being enforced, really.
It's not the fact that there's no laws, because there is. That's why there's such a thing as illegal immigration, hence the word illegal. We just don't seem to want to be punishing those that are doing it. And my biggest question to this is, these people pay traffickers thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to get across the channel. So why can't they come through the legal proper processes. And one of the reasons they can't do that, and we know for a fact, is because they are criminals. So the idea of we're not, oh, they're just trying to flee war-torn countries, they're innocent. They're not innocent, because if they were, like we've just seen the bomber in Liverpool, his asylum claim failed.
Yeah, but the thing is, the media are careful. They don't want to connect that. They don't want to tell the truth. They try to skirt around it. You know what I mean? They even talked at one point. They even talked at one point about being a Christian bomber, Bish, didn't they? He was a Christian bomber. He converted, didn't he? What do you give his conversion then?
Well, from what I understand, there's an awful lot of immigrants approaching the channel now that are getting tattoos of Christ and various things to portray themselves as Christians, and that's open to speculation. I think what we've got to be careful, though, of is not conflagrating two separate issues into one. We do have immigration laws, and the whole process is broken. I have helped genuine asylum seekers enter the country. I've been responsible for them till their application was processed, and seen them successfully immigrated and become contributing members of the British economy and the British lifestyle. They've become an asset to the country. Our problem with the laws is the government is putting up the argument we don't have sufficient laws to deal with people crossing the channel. Well, we've been in control of our own lawmaking outside of the European Union for pretty much the last 12 months. And that, to me, is more than ample time to put in place laws to deal with it, whether it's a return to French, to Calais or to other parts
the
of
thing
France.
Is, can I just say this without defending them? They're not just coming from France, mine. You know that, don't you? They're coming from other parts of Europe as well, apparently. I've read some reports this week where they're coming from other parts, like the Netherlands or Belgium. But I know via France, a lot of them. But they're coming from other coastal parts as well. It's not just France. But we know a majority of them are coming from Calais. We've seen the camps there. I just want to move the conversation on because of our time, guys. Sophie, because you brought the story up, what should the Home Office do, given the fact that it's been floated about the idea of the Australian approach? There's a few other approaches they've talked about. Now, the Australian approach, they have zero illegal immigration in Australia. Zero. Because they took a stance and said, you will not be welcome here unless you go through the right procedure. I mean, what should our government do to stop this? Because it is a massive crisis, isn't it?
They need to do exactly what Australia are doing. I don't see why they're not mirroring it. It's clearly successful. And this whole thing about being against immigration, listen, Rich, none of us have ever been against immigration. We have never been against immigration. Immigration is a wonderful thing. Our country was built, really effectively on immigration. We're against illegal immigration, and that's a real difference. And that's where the media try and spin it. And they think those of us that have that view are sometimes in the minority. We're not. We are the majority. The media just have control of the narrative. And it's the same thing as the narrative of migrant crossings. It's people trafficking. That's what it is, plain and dry. But I think they do need to copy what Australia are doing. It's clearly effective. And they're going to be, there's going to be a few lefties that are going to be crying, but they're the same ones that are defending criminals on the regular basis. So do I really care what they think? No. And neither should the government. And I think that they do need to start doing what Australia are doing and take a tougher stance, because it's about time that our safety comes first, because they've lost. So there are migrants that come through and are vetted, but there are so many that go unvetted. And we're talking about danger against, women and children and all of this. Well, these people are walking our streets and we don't know who they are or where they come from. And it's people like us that are going to bear the brunt of it, not the government. And how many more, young girls have to be raped by migrants and stuff like that until they start doing something? How many more places have got to be blown up before they start doing something? And they're choosing to put us at risk. That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, well, I think the government need to take a stronger stand on this. And Kai mentioned migrants having Christ tattooed on them to appease some kind of a process so they can become legitimate citizens of the UK. I mean, that is fantastic. But Kai, let's go to some of your headlines and papers. What have you picked up this week in the headlines that grabbed your attention, and what do you make of it?
Well, I was looking at the Observer this morning thinking, could it get any worse for Boris Johnson, or should we just change his name to Boris U-turn Johnson, as the Tory government have once again facing a backbench rebellion over Boris Johnson's U-turn on care spending, particularly affecting a large percentage of the red wall that they won back from Labour in 2019 in the general election. I think it's something like 41 out of 54 seats that swung blue for many for the first time since the creation of those constituencies are being disproportionately affected under new Tory plans for spending, particularly in the area of healthcare. And it seems that across the country, the less affluent will be greatly or more disproportionately affected by the plans to have a set tariff for charges against housing for care, particularly amongst the elderly. And I think it's once again proof that the government doesn't know what it's doing, can't make up its mind, and is not taking into consideration the people that actually gave them the majority they now have. The proposals are being put forward by the committees, by other ministers, that would look at a scaled variation, or possibly even a much lower set fee, a cap on how much people would need to contribute towards their cost of care. As we get, obviously we have to deal with the fact that we do have a larger percentage of the population that are aging, that we are living longer. We are, despite the pandemic, a lot healthier than we used to be. And our cost of spending on care is going up every year because of that. But to put the burden on people that have worked their entire life to then lose their assets because of having to cover the cost of care, which up to a particular age group in the UK is pretty much free at the point of delivery. So Johnson's once again facing another Tory rebellion.
I mean, I look like this. This was all part of the levelling up idea as well. I mean, it's similar stories, you know, the North now experiencing some change to the whole idea of infrastructure investment when it comes to rail, for example. You know, Boris Johnson promised he'd do so much, and these are red wall kind of areas that turned blue. And now I know that a lot of those places are Labour-led councils as well. So I get there's a political aspect to this, but those promises, it seems, are being broken by the Conservative government, or at least they've tinkered with the manifesto and they've changed some of those promises. It doesn't bode well for a Prime Minister, Sophie, does it, when he promises one thing and then does something completely different?
No, but I think if you have a look at the manifesto that was produced in 2019, which most people who voted Conservative would have voted for, triple lock, gone. Basic Conservative foundational principles that the party was built upon, gone. This man doesn't stick to any of his promises. And not only doesn't he stick to his promises, he doesn't even stick to the principles of the party that he's represented for years. And the very, very basic principles that the party was founded on. So I really don't understand how you can call yourself a Conservative when you can't even conserve your own party principles, but there you go.
Well, Sophie, you consider yourself a Conservative. I know you do, young Conservative. But I wonder, you know, if there was an election tomorrow, let's say, for example, do you think Boris would have the same support he had back in 2019? Are you hearing from others that you know as well within, you know, your own social network as well, that they're kind of like, well, I couldn't vote for the Conservative Party right now?
Yeah, 100%. So I've gone from 2021, I actually ran as a candidate for the Conservative Party, and as of current, I am no longer a member of the Conservative Party. I'm a member of another party now. But basically, that's the same story for a lot of people. And I think Boris, I think there's a real urge of like complacency amongst the Conservatives, but they really don't understand the concept of that these red wall voters weren't won on anything but Brexit. And they're not true loyal Conservative voters, and they only voted to get Brexit done. And next time, you know, we cannot take their votes for granted. And this is the thing: a lot of the red wall new intake are being very careerist and trying to toe the line with the government because they want cabinet positions, but they'll never get a cabinet position when they're not in Parliament in the first place, because they're going to lose their seats in 2024 or 23, whenever the election is going to be. Because people only voted to get Brexit done. The Conservatives have let them down. They lent them their vote. They lent them their trust. The Conservatives threw that away, and they're not going to do it again.
Yeah,
and I don't think the Conservatives understand that.
I think that's a very interesting point that Sophie makes, because when you look at the red wall Tories that came in 2019, even though you have multiple U-turns by Johnson and the incumbent government, even though we've seen multiple manifesto pledges broken, and as much as we're seeing a move away from the Conservative amongst the electorate, it is still surprising that in the face of a backbench rebellion in the 1922 committee, that there are still so many, particularly if you look at at the Sunday Express today, where they lead about the story leads with Johnson still the man to lead the party in the next election.
That's coming
so
up
it is showing that what Sophie is saying is true, is that they very much, we are in this age of career politicians that are towing the party line, because even though these measures will disproportionately affect their constituencies, from a parliamentary party standpoint, they're still offering their support to a man that's continually breaking promises that he's made to the country.
Yeah, well,
that man's destroying their career.
Yeah, of course. Well, they had a dip in the polls, didn't they? Right, but it's changed. We know polls are like anyway. I mean, I don't, put your life on them. But, well, yeah, we know who started YouGov off. But anyway, I mean, they had a dip in the polls, didn't they? And then they're starting to come back up now. I just wondered if Johnson has taken a gamble here on this whole green agenda thing, which I'm not going to talk about today because I'm fed up of talking about CON26. I said enough about that before. But I wondered if he thought those red wall seats where that helped them get that 80-seat majority. I wondered if he's thinking, well, Brexit's got done. I need something else to anchor my political future on. Is there something else? And I wondered if he's thinking that a lot of those former red wall constituencies were kind of more environmentally friendly, if you like, for a better word, and trying to keep them on board, to keep that vote alive. I might be wrong, but I'm just guessing. I mean, what do you think that's a possibility, Soph?
No, because I feel like the green agenda policies are going to disproportionately negatively affect those who are in the red wall. And I don't think the red wall really care about being green, to be honest. I think the red wall are a little bit similar to how politics is in Thurrock. And that is that they don't care about these petty sort of socialist issues, red walls, sleaze, corruption. It's all irrelevant. They need to be talking about the real problems, which is, immigration, terrorism and stuff like that. So no, I think the green agenda is actually going to hurt him more, and I don't really know why he's trying to be the leader of the Green Party at the minute instead of the leader of the Conservative Party. But
well, you have accused him of that quite a few times, Sophie, the last couple of weeks. The leader of the Green Party. I know, I have noticed that, but it is true, though, isn't it? I mean, Kai, what do you make of this? I mean, I don't want to go on Con when he says, let's stay with this, but let's talk about Johnson's political future then for a moment, right? Because it's all based on some of these policies and U-turns. With all these U-turns, do you think I think they will be, do you think they'll be detrimental to him when it comes to an election? Or do you think he's got the support there, even maybe, it might be scarce in the backbench, he's got enough support to be able to win another election?
Well, Richard, it doesn't matter how much support he's got, whether it's the front bench or the back bench. That's not the support he needs to win. We don't have parliamentarians that elect a leader. It's the electorate that elect a party, and the leader of the party becomes the prime minister. If Johnson wants to see the red wall stay blue, if he wants to see an 80-seat majority remain for the Tories in Parliament, there's only one way to do that. Deliver on the promises that you made. Stop faffing around with healthcare spending that disproportionately affects those areas. Deliver on the promises you made, no matter what the cost to HS2 and improve transport links. Deliver on the promise to improve infrastructure and spending in those constituencies. Stop creating or stop adding to, I should say, the north-south divide. Break down that barrier. Shorten the distance between the north and the south. Be far more proactive where the country needs it. Be a man of integrity for the first time in his entire political life, and be the prime minister this country actually needs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say something else. Going to get me. People are probably going to call me all sorts when I say this. I got a bit of sympathy for Johnson. I mean, what I mean by that is, he has, look, when he won in 2019, without going over old stuff here, right? It was great for Brexiteers like myself and others as well. I had my own views over what happened with the Brexit Party, which became Reform and all that, as you know, Kai. But I just wonder if, the person that I supported at the start of this, I was tweeting stuff backing Boris Johnson, saying, it's great that he's because the last thing we wanted was Jeremy Corbyn in power. All of us, let's be honest. I mean, can you imagine if he was the prime minister? Oh my God, I think I would have left the country if I without a vaccine passport. I definitely would have done it somehow, I tell you. But I've got to be silly because let's put it like this, right? So he becomes the prime minister with a whopping majority, and then all of a sudden this pandemic hits. And he's faced with a pile of shit that he never expected to happen. And he's having to wade through all of this. And all of a sudden, he's like, shit, what have I let myself in for? Am I right to have a bit of sympathy with him, Soph?
I think so. On the pandemic front, yes. But now, In the beginning, yeah, I really did, but now he's got this power, and he just doesn't know what to, like. He's trying to go on this, he's turned into a massive populist. He's trying to govern by polls. He's trying to manufacture support. Thatcher never had to manufacture support. She got it because she stuck to her guns, and people respected that. People don't respect populism, and that's what he's trying to do. With this whole vaccine passport thing, he can just shut it down now, but he's not choosing to, because he's trying to play to so many different groups that he doesn't need to do. I really don't understand the actual, political and campaign understanding why on earth he's trying to please Labour voters who, no matter what he does, will never ever ever vote for him. But in doing that, he's doing it at the expense of all of the support of people that were born, bred Conservative, have voted Conservative all their life, and have given everything to the party. He's trying to please people that would never ever back him, no matter what he does, at the expense of people who would back him to the end of the earth, and throwing it back in those people's faces. And I do not get the logic behind it, because he's going to lose seats when he doesn't have to, because he's trying to please some people that are sitting there in Islington that are rich champagne socialists that will never ever vote for him. And I don't get the philosophy.
Very good point. Well, let's move this on then. So the next headline, Sophie, you picked up something that was mentioned in the paper as well, on racial bias over COVID deaths. Which paper was that? And tell us a little bit about that story that grabbed you this week.
Oh, okay. So it's the Sunday Times' story in how Sajid Javid is going to do an inquiry into racial bias of the healthcare system. It's not just the COVID deaths; it's the healthcare system as a whole.
Yeah, well, he was on the Marsh. Wasn't he on the Marsh show talking about that this morning? Wasn't he? Because Andrew Marr asked him the question. Yeah, yes. He was. Because I actually ripped the video. I know if people have seen it on Twitter. You can check it out on RW Taylor's on my Twitter account. I kind of edited his voice, and I put my Welsh voice as if it was me and him answering. So I mean, if you haven't seen it, folks, you need to go there. Check out me on Twitter, RW Taylor's. Right, go on my Twitter and have a look at the video where I edited it. So instead of Sajid Javid giving the answers, it was me superimposing, doing a voiceover, saying what he really is saying, right? So basically telling you the truth. But have a look at that. But go on, Sophie. Yeah, so he was on there this morning talking about it's this racial bias within the healthcare system, isn't it?
Yeah. I just think we need to nip all of this rubbish in the bud, whether it be inquiries into racial bias in the healthcare system or diversity and inclusion officers. I don't even think this ever needs to be a necessity, but if it does, now is most certainly not the time. When waiting lists are sky high, you're about to sack 40,000 odd workers unnecessarily. I feel like this government are trying to basically destroy the NHS on purpose, yet we're the ones who had to spend 2 years trying to protect it. They're spending all of this money on irrelevant rubbish instead of helping us get our appointments and things. And I don't believe that diversity chiefs or this should be unnecessary in the healthcare system, because the reality is I don't care what colour or background my doctor's from, so long as I can get an appointment with him, which I currently can't do. So I just don't get the philosophy. Absolutely pointless. Yeah. It's a waste of time. It's deflecting. It's just stupid, to be honest. Yeah,
well, you can actually speak to receptionists now in GP surgeries who've turned into doctors miraculously somehow, and they can help you. I mean, it's just amazing. Kai, on that story then, this idea, I mean, we've had this kind of real emphasis over the last kind of 20 months or so, haven't we, of people talking about racial inequalities, systemic racism within our institutions, which the government, they did a report inquiry, and it was found there was no institutional racism in the UK. I mean, why are people continuing to bang that drum, do you think?
I think it's the latest in a long line of social rhetoric that finds an appeasement, and it's the latest cause that we all need to fight. And I'm mindful not to criticize it because of my role as a clergyman and the work that I do. But
don't go walk on me. Don't go walk on me, Bishop. Come on.
I can assure you I will never go woke. It's just that, I am mindful of the fact that there are more reasons at hand behind certain narratives that are being perpetuated. In relation to the article itself, we have to take into consideration this. I actually know people that work in the medical research industry, proportionately, the Afrocentric population, now, because the UK is doing this in a joint effort with our counterparts in the US, the Afrocentric population are exceedingly reluctant to take part in medical testing, medical trials, not because of the inefficacy of those testings, but because of historic actions that have been taken against the Afrocentric communities, both in the UK, Europe, and North America. I think back to modern history with the Tuskegee trials, when they deliberately injected African-American males with syphilis without telling them as part of a medical experiment. So there is, I wouldn't say that there is a racial bias because of this systemic racism. But once again, we are applying the race narrative to an industry where the number of Afrocentric people or minority ethnicities that are involved in the testing is so low because of the belief towards experimental procedures, medical testing, drug trials held within those communities. We have got to work on fixing that and rewriting, I shouldn't say rewriting, but undoing the story the history has created because of the actions of medical research companies, doctors, and all that, before we can make a step forward. So what we're doing now is applying the race narrative to fixing an issue because it's a racist thing, not that it's a medical malpractice historic issue that we now need to address and encourage those communities to become more active in the research element of medicine so that they're not disproportionately reflected in the research.
Yeah, I was going to say, I noted a tweet from Dr. Shola Moshogba, whatever her name is. I mean, you know the one. She's the biggest racist that I've ever come across on social media. I mean, a tweet she put out yesterday, actually, how to get away with murder, be white. What? Can you imagine if I tweeted how to get away with murder, be black? I tell you what, I would be arrested, I would be charged, I'd be in court, I'd be suspended from Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, but yet this woman is allowed to spew this crap out on social media, and she is, people like her are the ones, they are what they accuse us of. They're the ones who are, chucking this stuff out there, sort of, aren't they? Making out that we're all, because we're white, we're racist, by, even if we don't know it unconsciously, we're racist. I mean, did you see that tweet?
Yeah, I did. And I have a few things to say about that. Firstly, the whole racial bias issue. These people refuse to accept progress. They refuse to acknowledge progress because it gives them a paycheck and it gives them a job, and they wouldn't have it otherwise because they're not good at anything else apart from race baiting. Secondly, there is only one reason why Kyle Rittenhouse was cleared. And it was very simply because he wasn't guilty. And you cannot force him to be guilty because he was white. Is that white privilege? Automatically being guilty of a crime that you haven't committed because you're white? No. And it's like Claudia Webb in her harassment trial said, oh, please go easy on me because of my client as, disadvantages of black women. White privilege. What trial can I go to and say, hang on a minute, I'm white, can you let me off, please? That'll never happen, will it? No.
No, I mean, this race baiting in there. I mean, it happens a lot, in modern society today.
She's the worst.
She is. I just, I mean, look, I have the opinion that we're all human beings. We're all treated the same. We're all created equal in the eyes of God. That's my opinion. If you're religious or not, that's just my opinion. And I think, regardless of the color of your skin, it goes back to the old Martin Luther, quote, isn't it? It's not about the actual color of person's skin, but it's the content of their character. And at the end of the day, we should treat people with respect. But I find these people that make these accusations and spout stuff out on social media, they help fuel the divisions, Kai, don't they, that we have in society? And it doesn't help the conversation, does it?
No, far from it. I mean, I look at the voices that are emerging, and they do far more damage to the division within the community than they ever do to appease it, because the rhetoric is always violent in its tone, in its undertaking, in its actions that then turn into physical actions. Rittenhouse, people are baiting the race question about Kyle Rittenhouse, forgetting the fact that the three men that he's accused of assaulting and murdering, two died, are all the same color as he is. So I'm not quite sure how the race narrative fits into that. That's just my limited thinking. I think the issue is this, though. We keep hearing this thing about systemic racism. If such a thing existed, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. If systemic racism existed the way that we're told it did, then most of the people making the claims that it existed would not have the platform they currently have to make those claims.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We've got to put racism into context. I live in a world where racism exists. I have campaigned most of my life, and certainly all of my clerical life, against racism. I have been honored with awards and ceremonies for my work in the BAME community to prove that there are not the divisions that we are told exist, where communities do work together and put the color of skin aside on the basis, as Martin Luther King said, on the basis of character, of integrity, of doing the right thing, being what's best for the community. I live in a county where racism is abhorrently apparent in so many people. But that doesn't mean to say that we all believe that.
No, absolutely not. Well, listen, because we're almost running out of time. I'm running out of wine, and we're nearly running out of time as well. We've got literally three and a half minutes left. I just want to get you in on the final story, Kai. But suffice to say, I need to say this. I set a petition up on Twitter, some of you will know, to get me on the Neil Oliver show. Well, I've just had a message from the man himself. He's just this minute messaged me and said, Richard, we're going to make it happen. We're going to be in touch. So me and the course guy are going to have a fantastic chat. I've tried to explain to people this. He explains the same things as me in a very academic and intellectual way, whereas I am just like, what the freaking Nora's going on? You know, I'm not swearing now, as you know. So, I mean, we're going to have a wonderful conversation. And coming up soon on You and Rich Politics, I've got an exclusive with Jennifer Curie, who you know, or nonsense with Boris Johnson. She's just messaged me as well, saying she's going to come on Rich Politics very soon. So stay tuned for that. Kai, finish off then. The next paper, the next headline I grabbed you this week. We've got 2 minutes left. So what's grabbed you and which paper is it?
Well, we'll end with the Mail on Sunday reporting that once again, the BBC is going to war with the royal family. And you would think, given the year the BBC has had and its involvement with the royal family and the way that the Martin Bashir incident over Diana and that infamous interview was handled, they would be a little bit more appeasing. They're set to air a two-part documentary that outlines some false allegations which have already been blocked by Clarence House and by the Cambridges and the Sussexes concerning the relationship between Princes William and Harry. The royal family have been barred from seeing the documentary before it's released. The guy that's presenting it is a staunch Republican, anti-monarchist, sums up the BBC in 60 seconds.
Yeah, he does. He hates the monarchy. Doesn't he? I mean, I'm a big fan of the monarchy, right? I believe in it. I have always have been. I'm a royalist. I'm not going to apologize for that. I always have been. People find that strange being a Welshman because we think, well, you know, he's not really the Prince of Wales, is he? Well, no, listen, I understand how the monarchy works, but I'm proud to be British, and I know that you two are. And Sophie, on that story, I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, obviously, the BBC always get themselves in trouble. Obviously, the Princess Diana interview. I think the royal family really do need to take action against these people. They've got, you know, the most anti-monarchist person spewing out anti-royalist sentiments. Like, I mean, come on. And what makes it funny is this is the British Broadcasting Corporation. Like, they're so anti-British. Why are they so anti-British? They just don't deserve. I just don't understand. Like,
right,
they're the biggest Britain haters.
We're going to come to an end of the show today. Sunday paper roundup with me, Richard Taylor, and my guests tonight, Sophie Corcoran and Kai Dewar. Make sure you follow them on all social media platforms, especially on Twitter. I'm sure you'd enjoy some of this stuff. I mean, it's good sometimes. Mine's better, obviously, but hey, that's just my point of view. I'm only joking. Right, we're almost out of time. Right, Dick of the Week. Right, we're another plank of the week for Talk Radio with Mike Graham. I do Dick of the Week. We got 1 minute left. Who's your Dick of the Week, Sophie?
Oh God, I wasn't prepared for this. Andrew Pierce going on Jeremy Vine and chatting a load of nonsense
and lying. Yeah, okay. Kai, Dick of the Week.
Oh, second week running, Mark Drakeford.
Mark Drakeford,
I think he gets it every week.
Yeah, he does. He's ahead of the race. Mark Drakeford, you have been nominated once again, as I did last Sunday, as Dick of the Week. You've been watching Rich Politics here on a Sunday with the roundup of the newspapers, headlines with my guests, Sophie Corcoran and Kai Dewar. I'll catch you soon right here on Rich Politics. Bye for now.